Henry House with Perquimans Live. I'm sitting down with Dave Forsythe, who is running for
the North Carolina Senate, 1st District.
Okay, well, Dave, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure. So my name is David Forsythe. For those that don't know me, I'm a retired federal civil and environmental engineer. I did 31 years working for the Department of Defense around the world and locally. I'm now a utilities director for a neighboring county of about 50,000 people, meaning I'm responsible for maintaining the infrastructure for sewer and water. I'm also a Gates County Commissioner. What that means is that, you know, I serve on a local level, local governmental level, trying to help administer the requirements for the county in Gates. I resigned recently from being the Republican Party chairman for Gates County to run for this office. The reason I'm running for office, which is I think worthwhile, is as a member of the Gates County Commissioners, I'm also sitting on the Albemarle Commission, which is a group of 10 counties that reflect influence from across the district. Last summer, I saw a lot of misbehavior, in my opinion, of some Raleigh politicians. And as a member of that Albemarle Commission, we were able to put forward some resolutions and push back on stuff, along with lots of other people, when it came to some, I'd say, less than reputable efforts at our seafood industry, shrimp, crabbing, etc., then also some agricultural things. And so when Bobby Hannock, who has served as well, I believe, decided to run for Congress, I felt like we need to have somebody with the same level of integrity and work ethic to run for office.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and sitting down with me today. I know you have spoken in the past that you have a family. You know, your wife is working as a teacher, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, first grade teacher in Gates County.
Okay, and then you have, is it 2 children?
Oh no, I have twins that are 14 that go to Gates County High School. I have a 20-year-old that goes to UNC Charlotte, electrical engineering student.
Okay.
Then I also actually have 2 older daughters. One's a nurse anesthetist. She got her doctorate a couple years ago, very proud of her. And then the second oldest daughter from previous marriage, she's a respiratory therapist.
Oh, well, fantastic.
So
okay.
Actually 5 kids, yeah.
5 kids. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's, you touched on why you're running.
Yeah.
So let's peel back the onion. Let's get down to the nuts and bolts.
Okay.
Okay. The marine fisheries concerns that we have. I think the term locally we've been using is shrimp gate.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond shrimping.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
How can we? It's recreational. It's a representative of the recreational fishers. I believe that is bringing a lot of the churning up of materials. Is that correct?
Well, yeah.
But it's not the recreational fishermen.
No. No, so it's a complex issue, complex net of all the issues, regulations, the different things that have gone on. And I've tried to get myself up to speed attending the SAFMC meeting in Kill Devil Hills, Hilton, back in December, attending the U.S. Marine Fisheries, North Carolina Marine Fisheries Commission meetings in Manio, the one's coming up shortly. Man, it's a complex web. What it really amounts to is that our North Carolina fishing industry is under assault. There's no other way to put it. From shrimping, where our guys are shrimping, and we have India and China bringing in massive amounts of shrimp and seafood into various markets. And of course, in my opinion, they want to do as much as they can to stifle our industry. We have crabbers, the same thing. And it's an unfair balance of what's going on. The regulatory bodies have tried to put in place some restrictions that, from talking to commercial fishermen, and I've called the chairman of the North Carolina Marine Fisheries numerous times and talked to him, to various other shrimp organizations, to waterman organizations, and all of them understand that there needs to be regulation, but it needs to be based on sound science. And part of the thing is an example is that some of the data they use right now was collected in 2016. It wasn't published till 2018. And they're trying to put in restrictions this past summer based upon that almost 10-year-old data. Well, actually, it is 10-year-old data now. And all the fishermen say, hey, it's our business, our livelihood, whether they're commercial fishermen, whether they're charter, recreational fishermen, they all understand there needs to be regulations, but they talk about things like, hey, they're going out and doing sampling at a location where nobody's ever seen crabs. Let us show you the locations where the crabs exist at certain times of year, and we'll show you where to take your samples. They want to have their industry protected.
Well, it's kind of like figures don't lie, but liars figure.
Exactly. And quite frankly, they have systems set in place to try and have, I forget what they call it, but there's an automatic system where certain things happen, a regulation or a restriction kicks in without sound science. And it's my understanding that the sampling is supposed to happen every 4 years. So in 2016 was the last time sampling was done. We should have had additional sampling in 2020. We should have had additional sampling in 2024. And if that's not happening, it's crazy that they're not.
Who does the burden of taking the samples fall upon?
I think it's the state. And again, they may be resource constrained, meaning short of money. But at the same time, you can't say, well, we're going to charge for it or regulate an entire industry. And people don't realize it. And I've gotten up to speed very heavily in talking to people, going around and visit various fisheries, all the way from Stumpy Point to talking to people in Wilmington regularly, to people in Columbia. And I mean, this is a vast body of people. I mean, it's not just a couple small businesses going out and collecting fish, commercial guys. It's not just a few recreational guys. There's a whole host, an industry behind it of the guys that make the gear, that sell the boats, that do the repairs, that sell fuels, that sell supplies, that process stuff, that serve. I mean, it's a vast thing. I mean, I think just one number I saw published recently was something on the order of over $500 million in just one measurable segment of the economy for northeastern North Carolina. Not talking about all of these.
And it's a substantial amount of population.
Yeah.
And it's not just the commercial fishermen, it's all the ancillary groups. Like you said, you have maintenance, you have construction, the bait shops, the cleaning of the crabs, it goes on and on and on. And the knowledge that we have of maintaining fisheries has evolved so greatly. But my experience has been, we lived Chesapeake Bay area.
Yeah.
So, we went through the downturn of, we don't have crabs, we don't have oysters, we don't have rockfish. So I'm well aware of the challenge. We still have crabs, we still have oysters, we still have rockfish in this area here. It's not as many as it was, but it behooves the commercial industry to manage with some oversight.
Yes.
Because if they fish it out, then they're out of a job, and they understand that. They're smart business people.
Exactly. So the perception is some have tried to portray this is that, they're fighting back on everything. They're not. Most of these people will tell you, hey, we want to be smart about it, but they can say, hey, these guys, we'd love for me to come on our boat. I had several guys say, I'd love for the regulators to come out and go on my boat with me and actually see what we see collecting, not just sitting at the port waiting for us to come back. I mean, these guys are open to honest, fair regulation, and that's what we need to provide them. And it should be, in my opinion, Raleigh making decisions based upon lobbying efforts from others and trying to force it down our throats on short notice.
And, I made a comment to someone else who's in your same race about crab pots.
Yeah.
If they could just keep crab pots out of the navigational fishing lanes sometimes, that would really be appreciated. That's me as a recreational person.
Yeah.
Okay. But what ties into our fisheries is also our ag community.
Right.
And ag has always been a substantial part of eastern North Carolina.
Yes, indeed.
And, we see some algae bloom, which we could say, it was all the nitrogen from the farms.
Runoffs, right.
But we're smarter about what we're putting on the farms today. So that might be part of it, but we also have issues with our treatment plants doing discharges that increases. How can we address algae bloom so we limit the kill-off that we have in the waterways? Because, the fry stages we're getting every summer. We get some algae blooms coming in the region.
The farming community, I grew up working on a hog farm. Big peanuts, soybeans.
You were the one. Okay, all right.
And so I saw it evolve. I mean, I'm old enough, being 65, to see the 70s that it evolved to where farmers that, ran hogs on open lots and had runoff. The farmers have taken extraordinary steps to cut down that. I don't believe, in my mind, that the farmers are really responsible for most of the runoff now. Not at all. In fact, most of them are very responsible guys. I mean, I remember putting in the big farm operation I worked on, a cargill feed floor, which is effectively a lagoon system and everything, so they could preclude a runoff.
Right.
Those steps have taken place. So as far as algae blooms, again, I saw that at one point. I lived for 2 years in Florida, worked for the Department of Defense, and they had massive algae blooms. And some of them weren't directly related to runoff, but some of them were due to urban runoff more than the farmers. And so the farmers are getting beat up for what sometimes is urban runoff, unregulated stuff. I mean, you or I living in a town can go out and put fertilizer on our lawn.
Right.
Everybody does that. And when the rain comes, it washes off all the hard surfaces of the city and it heads straight to the waterways. And a lot of it can be attributed to that. So, I mean, if we're going to really look at the algae blooms, we need to really look at the source of where the bloom's happening. Again, it's back to good science. And that's my thing is, I guess as an engineer, an environmental engineer, even my master's degrees in that, is it's always about doing good science, collecting good data, assessing what the problem is, and making decisions based upon that.
But algae blooms existed before we started fertilizing our yards,
exactly.
fertilizing our fields. It's a natural occurrence in nature.
Exactly.
But we're trying to mitigate it occurring.
Right.
Okay. During drought times, there's other issues that we have to deal with. You understand infrastructure, the underbelly of what makes a small town run.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because we've known each other, I guess, for what, a year and a half? Because
more like 3 years.
3 years. Because you used to oversee what was going on in the town of Hereford.
Right.
So you understand the underpinnings. You understand the challenges. The town of Hereford is not unique to having outdated infrastructure.
Not at all.
Some money is available on a federal level, some money is available on the state level, and all the towns claim that their pockets can be turned inside out because there's no money left to do anything, and so we have to build things up.
Yeah.
How do we address that?
So it's a tough one. So I know the town of Hereford is considered more destitute by the scoring system the state has, which allows them to be eligible for money. And I know right here for the town of Hereford, I applied worked hard my short time here of getting a grant. So part of the wastewater plant here that's going to be upgraded.
Right.
Part of that upgrade is stuff I worked for, put in for, and I think they got $4.2 million that's coming down the pipe for them to do some
couple dollars.
So they do regulate it. So like the discharge for town of Hereford goes up to the river. Highly regulated. We take samples, I say the town does take samples 3 times a day, has it sampled, has it measured, analyzed, whatever, submits it to the state. State watches that pretty heavily. So as far as the wastewater plant for town of Hereford, it's pretty well functional. We've had lots of visitors. I've shown lots of people that over the years, how it functions. But as far as the general infrastructure, pipes, sewer lines, pump stations and all, when you have a small town, you're forced to operate as an enterprise system. You have to collect enough in rates to pay for the cost of operation and repairs and everything. And what's happened across the U.S. for most small towns is they put in sewer systems and water systems, as far back as the 50s, but some even further back. I know the town of Hereford has some pipes that were 1908. I remember digging up one valve and we found it was 1908.
Okay.
But, when you build that stuff and you don't pay to keep it up, and nobody really thought they need to, you put in a steel valve and you think that's going to last forever.
Right.
Well, okay, 1920 forever seemed like 50 years.
It lasted their lifetime.
Right.
Okay.
So the problem is now is you have to pay for it. And unfortunately, small towns, if you raise the rates enough in this town to pay for the complete repair of this town, people would be paying $1,000 a month for a water bill or a sewer bill. So what has to happen, and what the state's helping do and the federal, is gradually ramping up scoring systems. You submit requests for grants and all, and show how bad your system is. We put in place here in town of Hereford a management assessment plan for the town. It says, these lines are this old. Here's where we're having lots of breaks. You submit it to the state and say, these things need to be repaired. Here's how much money we have. And they score you, and they try to balance it out across the state for those most in need to help them pay for and get repairs done. It's a slow process. It's not perfect. We're not a super wealthy nation that can pay to go out and fix everything all at once. So it's going to slowly improve. I know that the town of Hereford, I think, has about, if I recall, $14.8 million in repair work that's been approved that's in the works. Another $4 million coming for a wastewater plant. There'll be more money coming in the next 5 to 10 years as more things need to be repaired. So this is all a long excuse to say that it's not something we're going to fix quickly. It's going to take some funding from the state. The towns, counties, the people operating these systems, like the system I operate up in Virginia, you have to adjust the rates, and people scream, and I understand it, are not happy when you raise the rates, but we have to gradually get it up to where we're paying to maintain the system to perform the function that it's supposed to do.
Okay. And in Perquimans County,
Yes.
they do not have a sewer system.
Right.
Okay, so the town of Hertford is kind of hung out to dry, so to speak.
Yes.
Versus having septic tanks in everyone's backyard or along here.
Right.
Perquimans River is a lot better off because we have a sewer system in town.
Right.
I heard stories of finding things floating in the waterway.
Yeah.
Years ago. So
Yes.
we definitely are much better along. What about electricity? Because Hertford's unique.
Yep.
They offer electricity. They're a closed loop system.
Yep.
They buy their power off of, is it Duke Energy?
Dominion Power actually services the town of Hertford. I say we, again, I'm feeling ownership from having lived here. Dominion Power comes in, brings power in, and then there's a joint, it's almost like a cooperative across the state for all towns that operate their own system. It comes in, they meter it or whatever, and then the town effectively buys it from the cooperative at that point.
Right.
And they help balance out highs and lows. So if the bills, instead of having bills go way up and way down, that cooperative kind of balances it out and how much they charge. So Dominion Power provides for the town of Hertford, comes in here, and then it's sold to the community. And again, it's a small system. I know when I was here, we were putting in place a system to basically go out and GPS each and every pole to be able to tell where it was for breaks and everything. But again, old system, takes a little bit of time to move up.
So in your professional opinion, a co-op system that they have in the county for electric rates versus a co-op system that the town is overseeing, which one is better for John Q?
That's a loaded question. I'm preferential to the town of Hertford because I feel like we ran a good system. Had some highly talented older gentlemen who retired from other places were willing to take lower salaries to work here because they like it. And so very hard-working guys maintained the system well, kept the rates pretty reasonable. The cooperative that I talked about for town of Hertford is a I think 30 different towns across North Carolina are part of that. So then balancing out that cost, they really are intended to try and be effectively a nonprofit. The cooperatives that you see out, other cooperatives in the area, I'm not going to name any names.
Yeah, that's fine.
They're not truly, in my mind, and again, I don't mean to be critical of them, they're an operation, but I don't think they're a break-even organization. And, nobody works for free. I used to tell this to young engineers that, hey, your job's not to break your contractors that are doing work for you. Your job's to get a good, fair product for our taxpayers. And so these guys have to make a living. And the rate management that goes on, that's where the criticality of it comes in. The state has a system, and recently as Albemarle Commission, we wrote request, we'll say, a memorandum to the rate guys for insurance to say, hey, you guys, hold on, pause here, take a better look at the proposed rates for some of the homeowners insurance that was going to go up 40%. We said, pause, take a look at this. We don't support this. Same kind of thing goes on with rates for cooperatives, for Dominion Power or Duke Energy or anybody else. They have to go through a rate process. And the key is to make sure the scrutiny of that process is valid. Because an awful lot of times, people perceive it as a rubber stamp. And so I'd hate to say that, oh, I hate those guys. That's not the case at all. I buy my power over in Gates County from Dominion Energy, okay?
Okay.
But,
is that through a co-op or is that
directly from them. And bills have gone up. I will say this, and seeing friends that are across the other side of the county and people here, what they're seeing increases from their local co-ops does seem to be higher than the rate increases I'm seeing from Dominion Power. But again, I don't know enough details to assess them.
Okay.
I do like the town of Hertford because, again, I feel like it was functional and part of a true cooperative amongst towns trying to balance out loads.
Okay. Now, we're talking about energy. What about the beautiful little pinwheels we see dotting our landscape, and then the solar panels that are laying out? You drive down 17, you see a mini solar farm. You start to get a little off of the main road. You can see solar farms starting to take over ag land.
Yeah, so, wow, there's a mixed bag there. The turbines versus the things. Again, Albemarle Commission, we just voted last month to go to the state and said, hey, wait a second, you have so many of these solar farms that are excluded from taxing. Like something like 80% of the tax base for that is excluded. And we went to them and said, hey, you need to start rolling this back in. These guys excluding being excluded from the tax rate for property is just not fair to some of the communities. And I'm thinking it was Currituck and one other that they were losing like $1.5 million a year in taxes because they were given a tax break. And so we asked them to, hey, come back and look at this.
Well, I think I had John Sproul in here before. He's running for...
yeah, I know John.
Yeah,
good guy.
Yeah, he's running for a different office. But, Washington County had the thing, one of the solar panel people did not follow their paperwork in time, and they didn't get their rebate, so to speak.
Right.
And they're like, well, if we give you an exemption for property tax, then we have to give everybody an exemption, so no, and they eventually paid. So are you agreeable to sacrificing ag land for solar panels? Let's do solar panels, and then we can talk about windmills.
Right.
Okay. Are you agreeable to sacrificing ag land for solar panels?
So this is tough. This is where me as a capitalist, Republican, long-term conservative, I generally believe that people should have the right to do with their property as they see fit. However, I have to say this, again, working with solar panels, when I was the federal government back when we had the financial issues under the second Bush presidency, we went out and started a lot of DOD land being sold and converted into solar farms. Saw a lot of issues, got very educated on. Solar panels vary gigantically. One solar panel is not the same as another. You really don't know driving by which panels are good quality, which ones will be, which ones will fall apart in 20 years. They'll say, oh, they want to sell you these things.
It has a 20-year life.
Yeah.
But
does it really have a 20-year life?
Are they going to be in business in 20 years to support it?
And will they walk away and leave those things there? And will they potentially, depending on what they're manufactured from, will they be a disposal concern? Will hack that site? So there's a lot of issues with it. The part about the farmer being allowed to sell his property or whatever and potentially make the United States energy independent, I like the idea of us never being dependent upon foreign nations for power. I love that idea. However, we got to do it smart. And so if we really know and are going to follow and track the solar farms, I don't like them, but I don't think that we should over-regulate or go crazy about it, as long as they're paying their fair share of taxes. We shouldn't say, hey, you get to build this thing, oh, you get a free tax break, you rake the money in, walk away in 20 years.
On the federal level, I think we have said no more, no more incentive money in that regards. Then we have the wonderful little windmills that they were here when I moved down. We could see them. We have, we drove one of the times coming into the area when we first moved, saw these flashing red lights in the sky. It's like, what's that? And then we got up a little closer. We realized it was windmills. So what's your thoughts on windmills? And, both of them have a lifespan.
Right, exactly.
And then, what happens to them at the end of the lifespan, that's up to whoever authorizes it to have that written into the contract. If they go usable life is 20 years and we're at year 21 and they say, we're shutting it down, but they don't have responsibility for cleanup, what do you do with those?
Right, so that's another, I say this, I worked overseas in Italy, Europe, and I saw windmills like crazy over there 20 to 25 years ago or more, right? They had lots of windmill farms. They were cautiously regulating. I interacted with the Italian government for various things and talked to them about stuff, and I would hear the regulators tell us that, oh yeah, it's very tough. Some of these are owned by very big corporations. You have to make sure they can be held responsible. And ultimately, that's the things. I don't know enough except that the federal government, for the most part, are the ones authorizing, funding these things. You saw just recently where President Trump went and said, hold on, stop with this stuff. And up in Virginia, Dominion Power took him to court and said, oh no, you're required to. You've already signed this. We need these millions of dollars to build these wind farms. But I'm not sure. Again, I'm back to the hard science thing, and I'm yet to see something published that says, here's an actual payback, here's what the cost of operation is, here's what the ultimate cost of disposal and closeout will be. And I've heard people voice to me, just since I've been running for office for a month and a half, that, hey, I lived in West Virginia where they had windmills, and when the thing shut down, they didn't have anywhere to carry these things. They're monstrous, they're enormous. The local landfills would have been filled up by just one farm of windmills.
Right.
So they were burying them in the sides of mountains to try and hide them. And
Fill it into the old coal mines.
yeah. The materials of construction too bother me. Being an engineer, environmental guy, has this cleanup stuff for a short while for Norfolk Naval Base. And a lot of times stuff is made out of things that is benign while it's operating. There's no harm to the environment and the community. But long term, if there's chemicals contained in equipment, it can leach out. And if you don't dispose of that properly. But the answer is, I'm being dodgy to you, I don't intend to be, but the answer is I don't know enough about this, say for sure, but I'm hoping that our regulatory agencies, that the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, that they're actually working or actively engaged. I don't know the answer right now, but I would be hesitant to say, oh yeah, that I'm confident that they're going to walk away from these things in 20 years or 25. I mean, but there's a whole lot of issues of safety and all. I mean, I think everybody's watched YouTube videos enough to where there's been several documented cases where the things were poorly manufactured and it shows them coming apart. And those gigantic blades flying 1.5 miles away and crashing into the ground. Honestly, I've riding on the bypass for Elizabeth City frequently.
Yeah.
I ride by there and often think, if it's really windy, I start looking at those things thinking, is something going to come flying off?
Yeah.
That's unrealistic.
I mean, every once in a while you see that they are parked, like when we had the ice storm a little while ago. The windmill was actually parked.
Right.
Because it was safer that way for the equipment.
Right. I will say this too, the idea that the windmills being offshore here in North Carolina, again, if it's federal regulated.
I was getting ready to hit there.
And they allow it, the federal government allows it, from talking to several of our state legislators, and I've called them and talked about this just in the last month. One of them says, Dave, we don't have a dog in that fight. We can't regulate the federal government if they're allowing them offshore. I said, is there anything we can do? They said, well, the lights, there's easily something North Carolina can put in place and say, hey, we should have a system in place. He even named it, the one legislator. He says there's a system we can put in place that if a plane or anything else gets within 10 miles of it, the lights come on and flash while they're in the vicinity, but otherwise they go dark, so people aren't sitting on their back porch looking at the beautiful ocean at night and there's just red lights flashing and everything all the time. So There's a system, I can't think of the name of it. They said, so there's some things we can do to try and minimize the impact visually and otherwise, navigationally, but as far as regulating and stopping them, if the federal government has the authority,
signs off. Okay. All right.
There's not much we can do about that.
All right. Net metering.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, I guess we're kind of touching the third rail of, I've had people, put solar panels on your house and you can save on your utilities. And now we're tightening the screws a little bit on what net metering means to a homeowner.
Right.
So is the state oversight?
So for your viewing audience, net metering is effectively where you put in place, you can be windmill or solar panels or anything, but you generate electricity, and net metering is the ability to generate enough electricity that you can actually sell it back to the power company, theoretically, and then pay you for extra electricity you don't use. That was a good concept initially, okay? The problem becomes, like in the town, let's use the town of Hertford, for instance. Town of Hertford has 2,000 customers. The cost of maintaining the wires, the electricity, staff, houses, buildings, supplies, your trucks, the training of your employees, etc., to maintain that system. You divide that cost out in your rates over 20 individual customers. If you suddenly say, hey, 150 of them are jumping out and they want to sell you electricity back, well, you now have to divide that cost, and everybody else in the community's rates will go up to cover those overhead costs, okay? So that can be problematic, okay? But additionally, the state of North Carolina, though, has been, like you said, dialing back significantly because of the sort of forced sale of electricity to companies that are saying, we don't really need it. Some places we have adequate capacity. If you want to jump
or if they have overcapacity and they're selling to other people.
Right, so we don't really need you to jump on our system and forcibly sell us electricity. People will argue, and there's some validity to it, is that if you're generating electricity, and if we really are short overall electricity in the nation, that somehow there should be a means of collecting it in there, but you can't have it to where net metering is forcibly put in place without some smart system to keep it from impacting a small town like Hertford.
Right.
Okay? And a cooperative, maybe a cooperative that has some big significant rates going on, they might would resist it because they simply don't want to be forced into buying it. So there needs to be a smart process in place that allows for it to be used adequately. And I know just 2 years ago, North Carolina was dialing it back more and more.
And they were making a lower cost of reimbursement
Right.
versus what your regular utility rate was.
Right.
It was, a couple cents difference in a kilowatt hour, that would address the labor and everything else.
Exactly.
The
Overhead
infrastructure.
costs. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we have that. Perquimans County is being blessed. We have a new school project
Yes.
developing.
I'm jealous.
Okay, I know schools has been a topic of discussion while you've been out and about.
Yeah.
Gates County has an older infrastructure for their schools.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Are you still using the overhead projectors you wheel into the classroom?
No, actually
Okay.
not.
Okay, good.
My wife's first grade teacher, they have the smart boards on there that they do.
No mimeographs that they...
Actually, no, they don't. But they do. The funny part is we're a poor system. Gates County right now is going through some turmoil too. Wednesday night, just tomorrow night, we're going to actually have a joint meeting, our school board and the commissioners, that I'm going to have a discussion on there as well. We are looking at, because we have 3 elementary schools. Over the last 15, 20 years, Gates County schools have dropped in the number of students from about 2,000 or less
Right.
to down to now 1,300 barely, and that's with bringing in some students from outside the county, letting them come. So, you drop by a third. We have 3 elementary schools, but like the school my wife teaches in, there's like 8 empty classrooms.
Wow.
Other schools have empty classrooms. So our commissioners and the school board trying to work together to figure out how can we downsize and maybe close one of the schools. Big concerns with people about losing jobs, but the reality is that through natural attrition, that sounds bad, that's a nice way of saying people retiring or leaving to go to other places. Most of the positions that would go away because of it would happen anyway. Nobody really would have to lose their job. So I feel good about that. But at the same time, operating a school, if it's $600,000 as a minimum to maybe as much as $1.5 million in costs that could be saved, it's crazy to the taxpayer to not try and address that. So at a local level, most of the funding comes from the state or federal government, or at least it used to from the federal government. The local portion, though, for a small, poor county, every penny you pay towards that is significant. So we have to try and reduce our costs to keep the local people from having to pay too much while still getting a decent education. So it's a challenge. But our school teachers make dirt. My wife's a teacher. She does it because she loves the kids and loves teaching, loves to see them grow. But we really don't pay our teachers very well at all.
Well, you live in a border community. You have Virginia.
Yes.
Not far away.
Yep.
So, a teacher could come in and maybe they're fresh out of school, get a couple years of seasoning under their belt, and then they hop across the border.
Yes.
And what is the difference in pay?
So, I don't know exactly for every location. I know that Franklin, Virginia, which is, 35, 40-minute ride away from where we're at, they've sold a lot of teachers from us in the last couple of years, people talking about getting an $8,000 to $10,000 pay raise,
Wow.
is what I've heard.
Okay.
Had teachers leave to go to be librarians in other locations. Gates County is exceptionally low, in my opinion. It's not horrible compared to others, but very low. So how do you incentivize it? My wife gets to drive, 12 minutes away from our home to get to school. She loves it for that reason. She likes the kids. And we're fortunate enough to be fairly well from my federal retirement. Me continue to work as utilities director, that the money is not critical for her to work. But for some other folks, a teacher, if it's a husband and wife, they're both teachers, their pay is critical for them to be able to pay the bills nowadays.
Now, is there anything that you can do to incentivize teachers? Can you say, well, if you purchase a home in the community, maybe we rebate your property taxes or do something along those lines?
That's a great thought, and that's something I'm very open to among a host of other potential solutions. Set through the Dare County Board of Elections candidate forum the other night, listening to people and talking to them afterwards and before, and they talked very much about the Outer Banks being so expensive. Having to provide housing for teachers was critical. Mm-hmm. And I think they said they had 34 units constructed. They had 31 of them filled, 1 or 2 of them being repaired, but they had a backlog of 24 teachers that would like to move into them. So they clearly are trying to address it that way. Some other communities, I think Bertie County built some teacher housing, but it turns out they had issues and didn't have teachers wanting to live in the homes. I don't know if it's because of location or what. And they ended up renting them out to firefighters and other people. So that's an issue. we should definitely do something for teachers, but I would say this. We started a lottery in North Carolina a few years ago. The promise, the sales pitch was all this money's going to go to the schools. And they can still say, I had one tell me the other day, oh yeah, we're still using that money for the schools. Well, you are,
Is it the same percentage
you
as
pulled
when
away, you pulled away money that you were using for schools, and so that's just substituted for the money you've pulled away to use in other locations. We need to go back and look and say, hey, what were we funding before? What were the percentages in real current day dollars before the lottery, and then use the lottery money accordingly. That's a shell game, and I don't like the shell game.
So if while you're serving the state, a bill came across your desk that had an earmark of it's going for this, would you be in favor of earmark bills? Tax dollars?
So that's so tough. Earmarks tell me there's special interests getting involved, but there are times when, yeah, you do need to take special consideration. So it'd have to be a case-by-case basis, but generally, short notice, quick adds to bills, or quick bills that they try to push through, like last summer, the whole pesticide thing where they were indemnify the chemical companies, which would have left the farmers holding the bag.
Right.
Or when they're trying to push through a shrimp bill, or where they're going to ban fresh dairy. Okay, when they were going to try and do that, they do it in short notice. Anytime something's short notice, they're trying to bum rush you into a decision. It's not a good thing. And so earmarks, where you go in and tag something, the concept in general is not good, but there's always a time that something might really be necessary. You just need to be an open book, transparent about what you're doing, communicate with people. And I'll say this, several of the fishermen said, especially people on the Marine Fisheries Commission that I've talked to, have said, Dave, when you get into the Senate, all we ask is that if something comes up that's going to be done, give us a call and let us know about it right away. Because a lot of them felt like even they were blindsided by stuff that was trying to be passed. So earmarks are kind of the same thing. Not knowing a specific one, I can't say exclusively I'd never support one, but generally bum rush, quick natured, slide something in. Is,
well, I mean, using the example of the lottery.
Yeah.
Okay. The lottery was earmarked for education.
Right. I like that.
Okay.
Everybody knew it. That's what everybody expected. They expected that money to go to that. They didn't expect it. Oh, we're going to collect this money, so now we get to pull that money from the education and use it in other places. But that's not what was sold to them.
Right. But that's the challenge. Is once you have an earmark, people see, oh, this is a cash cow. Let's start to shave a little off here, shave a little off there, and all of a sudden you're not doing what the goal and intention of that bill was.
Right, and the whole thing is investing in our education. Of course, my wife's a teacher, so some people might say, oh, he's special interest vested in that. But the reality is investment in our kids and the education of our children and our society as a whole. That's an important thing. If America wants to remain competitive worldwide, and I've seen students and kids in Europe and Asia, working with those, we have to stay focused on keeping our kids educated. We have to do things like make sure we have broadband access for everybody. We need to do the things to make sure that the United States and North Carolina, more importantly, stays in the first world status with what we teach, what we provide, how we function. And if it's taking money and saying, hey, we're going to spend every nickel of this lottery money on education besides what we already spending, I don't see that as a bad thing. We could have built up some schools.
Now, that leads us, education leads us into employment.
Right.
I think Gates County, Perquimans County, we have a lot of common challenges there because we don't have trade schools.
Right.
That we could steer kids who don't need to go to a four-year college. I mean, I'm a firm believer in the concept that Mike Rowe preaches of, teaching the trades. They make good money.
Yeah.
It's honest money. Sometimes it's not the cleanest job to do.
Right.
Okay. I don't think I want to be crawling under my house replacing a sewer line, but
done that. Yeah.
Okay. We've all been in crafts, so to speak. But it's good money. It's a way to provide for yourself and your family.
Right.
Those are skills that kids could be picking up while they're in high school if we had a trade school. Now, the population in Gates County, population for Perquimans, Chowan, etc., maybe it's not enough to sustain a trade school by themselves. Would you be open to a unified district.
Oh, absolutely.
You do a
Yeah.
trade school that's kind of centralized. Yes, it means someone may have to travel, someone may have to do this.
Yeah.
Would you be open to doing
Yeah,
something?
economy of scale, that's the term.
Okay.
Economy of scale. Put stuff together so you can spread the overhead and et cetera stuff. Yeah, it's actually good. I love it. Anybody doesn't like Mike Rowe, though, something's wrong with him. He's a great guy. I mean, hardworking guy. I'll say this. I grew up in a school system where we had a trade school for kids that maybe didn't want to do education the normal way. They could get shipped off into a trade school. And when I moved into North Carolina right after graduating from high school or whatever, and saw, I guess, a lot of my friends that weren't traditionally educated guys go into private business. A lot of those guys have done very well for themselves.
And
They've
so
built up
that's something that we need to. That's something that we need to explore. But getting jobs back in our community.
Well, keep in mind, like the Albemarle Commission, I've mentioned them a couple times already. So the executive director, David Whitmer, great guy for the Albemarle Commission. We have a program in place where they're trying and they periodically do training sessions. They offer grants to some small businesses that want to train people, but they're like, God, I can't really pay this guy full-time money and training. They actually offer grants and stuff for some small businesses to hire somebody. They'll basically pay their salary while they train them up for 3 months to get them up to speed. The employee wins, the business wins. So the Albemarle Commission is trying to do some of that. And so we get some funding to try to do that. We have job fairs and stuff around the area, the 10 counties. So some of that's going on. It's at a smaller scale. A common trade school would be a better function. And
I think it's more purposeful for our tax dollars.
Yeah.
And it's not just those trades. We can do something in the medical field.
Yeah.
So we can get essentially your initial nursing classes out of the way.
Yeah.
And you can sit for state licensing. Yes, having a bachelor's degree would be great for you to get your, for nursing people. I don't think it's almost mandated anymore. My wife had an associate's and she did well until, life happens.
Yeah.
So, that's something that we need. But how do we draw employers into the community and not change the reason why we live here?
That's tougher. Because I hear in Gates County especially, a lot of people there, somewhat gentrified community, you could say. People like their way of life, and I do too. That's why I live there. So I like the way of life. I like the country life. I like the idea the guys are hunting around all the time. Son-in-law runs dogs. I haven't seen him do it, but he runs dogs with the guys up there. My oldest daughter, she's really proud that she's killed several deer. She killed a deer the first time she went hunting. She was thrilled about that. I like that environment. But getting business, it's a balancing act. And so if you really want businesses and you want to have employers, you have to do things to incentivize it. And like for Gates County, we're utilities poor there. I mean, we really are. We're going to do a couple pipelines and some other stuff to try and help out, expand our water system some and all. But just having any business willy-nilly come in isn't necessarily positive. We need to be able to maintain that. And that's something else that came back last summer. State tried to push through and said, hey, we're going to control, give more access and have more at the state level and tell you can't really zone or plan and put some restrictions on local governments. That was a mistake, and I'm glad that failed. As a commissioner, I was like, what? They're going to come in and tell us we have to accept certain things? The local community has to have the right to control their development to what they want. It can't be the state dictating you will be forced to accept this.
You know better what is needed in your community than everyone in Raleigh.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, someone might have lived here and then moved there. But your feet on the ground. Okay. Same thing like with education. The local board of education, I believe, has a better knowledge of what your local students need than even someone from Chowan County or Perquimans, okay, because they're dealing with it on a daily basis. And then we move it up to a state level. So, to craft programs that address the shortfalls locally, even though, let's say, we might have a state mandated test, I hate the fact of teaching to a test. I've had employees of mine who can't come in and do simple arithmetic. And I'm like, really? And they're pulling out their phone to say, okay, yes, you're using 4 cups of flour. I want you to triple the recipe. And they stare. Okay. everyone out in the audience, if you have a problem, you need to pull out your phone. The answer is 12. I'm sorry, I joke, but you know,
I know what you get.
It's a different generation.
It is.
Okay. So how do we, our level of education in the community reflects what type of jobs we can bring into the community.
Right.
How do we entice, what type of business do you go after to complement our skill level in the community? For using Gates County as an example, you have some professionals,
right,
okay, who have a 4+ year degree,
right,
and then you have some people who have essentially trade or associate's degrees. But I would guess that you probably have a very large part of the population that has no degree, that they graduated high school, they never left the community, they continue to do the same work that their parents did, got comfortable on a job, and said, listen, this works for me. So how do we...
Well, see, I guess, I don't want to say I take exception, but I guess a little different perspective.
Okay.
So for my 2 older daughters, went through the Gates County school systems completely successful. I'm proud of all 5 of my kids, great students, all of them, one and all, good kids, good values. The 2 eldest don't live in Gates County, left long ago, and quite frankly, my older daughter tells me, said, yeah, your kids are going to move away because there's no job opportunities here. So that's back to that balancing act, is if you want to maintain and stay rural, you're going to limit the job possibilities. So if you're willing and open to allowing some business there, and you got to try and market it, you got to market what you want. But if you have kids that are, I'd say, as you say, high school diploma only.
Right.
Okay, so what industries do you search for there? Well, I mean, there's industrial capacity things,
right,
but industrial jobs in the United States are more limited. Are you going to be open to a factory opening up in your area? Are you going to give them tax incentives to be there? Are you going to be able to provide the infrastructure? And small counties that are less populated and poor may not have the money to offer a whole lot. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, but in Gates County, a lot of complaints is that kids graduate and leave the community automatically. I mean, our population has, I think it peaked 15 years ago at like 11,000, dropped down to just under 10, 10 years ago, and it's back up to like 10 or so. It's staying there, hovers there. So the death rate of people leaving are balancing out the number of new people being born.
You mind if we take one pause?
Sure.
Okay, so we're coming to the point that we need to wrap up here.
Okay.
Okay. Anything I didn't cover that you wanted to touch on? I mean, we talked about how to try to attempt to attract jobs.
Right.
We talked about the marine fisheries, ag, infrastructure, education. What did I miss?
Well, I guess the only thing I'd like to stress is it's not so much a direct issue, but I spent a long career with the federal government and now in local government as a utilities director, but also as commissioner. And I want to stress, integrity is a big thing for me. I mean, people can call around folks that I've worked with all around the world at different levels of federal government, and they'll tell you Dave's a straight shooter, he's a nice guy. You may not always like what he says, but you're not going to have him do dirty things behind your back. And I think integrity is a big issue that needs to be stressed. The other thing, too, is this special interest. We saw last summer Raleigh trying to intervene in our elections, in our operations, our industries here. And I got to say, it's really disturbing to me to now see the same guys that seem to have been behind a lot of that are also engaging in a lot of different elections. There's another delegate that's a representative race that's going on where same people are endorsing an alternative candidate there. They're doing this in 4 or 5 places around the state. And it really bothers me as a long-term Republican to see the Republican Party leadership at the state level engaging in that kind of behavior in various different local elections to try and force people out of office or force people into office that they like. And that's bothersome to me. And so I want to stress it again, for me is that the voter's going to decide. They're going to pick who they want. But I think I've got experience, broad experience. I've got local government experience operationally, the working level, doing budgets and operating within a budget, commissioner experience, Albemarle Commission experience. And I feel like I have by far the clear choice if the community wants an honest person that's going to be direct, fair, experienced in the office. I feel like I'm the candidate, and I just want to stress that. I think that's the case. But ultimately, the voter will decide. That's the beauty of our system.
Yeah.
Having lived worldwide, that's the beauty of the American system is the voter decides.
So when does early voting start for you?
February 12th.
Okay, and when's the primary election?
March 3rd.
March 3rd.
That's right.
Okay, so vote early, vote often.
No, I'm not Jim.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Dave. That's
Okay. If people want to reach out to you,
Yes.
If you want to talk to the camera and tell them how they can get a hold of you the best.
So I post on Facebook. I have a Facebook post is Dave Forsythe for NC Senate. I also have a web page, which is daveforsythe4northcarolina.com. Lots of information available there. I think I'm a real open book. I try to post periodically. I would encourage people to do their homework. Check and look. If you pick somebody else, fine, but do your homework and make an informed decision.
Okay. Well, Dave, I thank you for coming out today.
Thank you.
I wish you the best of luck.
Yes, indeed. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to see you.